Thanks to everybody who's dialed on now, people who are dialing on. I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. I'm going to share some slides. What's one of these without slides? And just to say a few things up front. The first thing is this is going to be recorded, but all the information that goes onto the Menti, all of that gets scrubbed down. We're in a safe space here. That will be happening. It's a webinar format, so Graham will be taking questions via the chat, but there will be points in the presentation where I give you a space to input on the Menti. Please do provide input when we ask for those. And I'll just get us going. By way of introduction, I'm a solution lead. I'm one of the global solution leads in our mobility space. I joined LHH about 3 years ago, and I joined LHH because of my background in change, and I'd worked at 2 consultancies beforehand. So my undergrad was psychology. I then joined Accenture and then a company called Baringa Partners. And then I joined LHH 3 years ago. And while I was at the consultancies, I made some great career choices and projects that I picked up, and I made some awful choices. And there were various reasons, good and bad, why I chose those. So I have a real passion for careers. And it was hard for me to think about how do I pitch this session. We've got, I think, probably in the region of between 100 and 200 people potentially dialing on today. I thought, well, all this range of people, what do I do? Do I share some delivery decks? Do I share some adapted sales material? And I thought, right, really, if I just had any one of you in a lift and you were walking out of our building and you said, by the way, I'm going to go and start my careers program for people within my organization, what would I truthfully tell you? So I've got a little vent that I'm going to go on, and you'll be part of it. But really, these are just 5 or 6 things that I really think and feel about igniting careers, and backed up with some data. So what are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to have a chance for you to reflect a bit on your own careers. We're going to talk about some common considerations in career management. We're also going to talk about some uncommon considerations in career management. There are several things that we keep seeing whenever a client meets with us that have been overlooked, that maybe clients don't think about, so we really want to make those clear for you. I'm going to underpin that with some stats, so there will be the occasional stat attack, and some insights, stories, things that clients have done. There will be a recording. We'll also send out the best of these slides, and if you want to know anything more about any of this in a totally no pressure way, I love talking about this stuff. If you just like a conversation, I'm tim.edwards@lhh.com. Okay, so hopefully you can all see the screen. This is the story. These are the 7 points that I'm going to make. So if I had you in the lift, these would be the things that I chatted along to you about. And we're going to start with this. Who's had a great career? So just to get you logged into Menti, there's no right or wrong here, just for those who are still logging on. If you can get your phone, and if you can go to www.menti.com and use the code at the top of the screen, which is 42316202. You can also do that on an internet browser window. What I'd love for you to do is go to menti.com, and just to check that it's working for you, if you can go there, type in that code, which I'll read out again in a minute, and just tell the group, and by the way, it's totally anonymous, so your name won't appear next to these, who's had an amazing career. They can be real, they can be fake, they can be whoever you'd like, really. You can even be yourself. So that's mine. I've put mine in. Gene Kranz, who was one of the mission controllers during the Apollo program, when NASA were launching people to the moon, an amazing example of someone in leadership development. Met everybody, most of the presidents of the states, everyone. And there are a few people, by the way, who we always get. So I'm now playing a personal game of bingo, and I've got the slide on the next screen of some of the names that always comes up. So we've got some great names coming through. So we've got Alex Ferguson, we've got the Queen, Judi Dench, Dame Judi Dench, Jessica Alba, yeah, definitely someone who's branched out, Oprah, Lord Sugar, Simon Sinek, Simon Sinek, an amazing person. So we'll just let a few of these names roll in. Just get yourself comfortable. Perhaps you're opening some sandwiches on your desk, whatever it is you're doing right now. Sir Richard Branson, that's a great one. Beyonce on there. Ben Francis, CEO of Gymshark. Yeah, amazing story. Check him out if you haven't read about his story or heard him talk on a podcast. He's great. Marcus Rashford, amazing. Me, well, good for you, whoever wrote me. I'm really proud and pleased for you. That's great. So, yep, Sir David Attenborough, Kardashians. Yes, they have had a hugely successful careers. J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates. These are great. I love seeing these coming. Okay, we'll just give it another minute or so, another 30 seconds, and then we'll roll on. Dave Goggins. Yeah. Dave Goggins, if you're into fitness and you want someone to motivate you, Dave Goggins is brilliant there. Jeff Bezos, yes. Elon Musk. I think I saw, I might have seen Steve Jobs up there. Steve Bartlett, yeah, brilliant. Great. Okay, now, if you're still struggling to log on, Tim Edwards, thanks. If you're still struggling to log on, don't worry. Anytime there's a poll, that code appears at the top of the screen, but I just wanted to give everyone a few seconds to log on. Serena Wayne, brilliant. Vernon Kay, yeah, fab. And Tim Peake, he's written a kids book, My Kids Up. Brilliant. Okay, so my game of bingo. How many people are there? Yes, need more women. So people we often get on these. So Steve Jobs normally appears. Mary Curie didn't appear today. She's often there, just a huge pioneer. So Richard Branson and Beyonce, I think, did make it on there. So, we all have a view of what great careers look like. And we had a big range of people. We had people who'd made loads of money. We had people who'd created new products. We had people who'd reached loads and loads of people and touched their lives. Huge range of people. So that's great to see. That people don't just have one fixed view of careers. And of course, careers look different. Great careers do look different to everybody. McKinsey asked 27,732 people across 37 countries, what drives life satisfaction? Now, I won't hold the suspense too long. You're on an Igniting Careers session. Of course, coming in strong on this is your job. So 25% of our overall sense of life satisfaction comes from our job. 36% comes from mental health and your outlook. So you can have a very challenging situation, but if you have a positive mental outlook, actually your overall feeling of life satisfaction can be high. Similarly, and we all know sad stories of people who've had hugely successful careers and they appear to have everything, but they just can't see it, they just can't feel it. So mental health is kind of a lens that sits across our overall sense of well-being. What's interesting to me, every time I look at this slide, is in that other bracket, so the 39% of overall life satisfaction, it has spouse, children, hobbies, etc. And because you've only got 39% of the vote on other and 25% very clearly on job satisfaction, what's interesting to me is that tells me unless your spouse is totally dominating that 39%, or your kids, or your hobbies, actually job satisfaction, if you broke out other, job satisfaction probably has more of a bearing on your overall life satisfaction than all those other things, which is absolutely incredible. So Tim Edwards venting at you in a lift, point number one I would make is this is massively important. And if this webinar achieves nothing else other than giving you a bit of impetus to focus on your own career and igniting the careers of others, that's okay with me. It's so important. It has such a massive bearing on us. And in that vein, if I think about my own life, I have times where my job and career hits me between the eyes. And sometimes it's a real positive. I'll have had a great week at work and I'll be sat there on a Friday feeling really proud and buzzing, and I'll come in and I'll play with my kids nicely and I'll be all full of gregarious fun at the weekend. But sometimes I go on LinkedIn and someone I was at school with has just been made partner somewhere, or somebody I worked with at Accenture who I really didn't think was all that good is suddenly way ahead of me, or they've just been presenting at a conference, and it can really yank my feelings up and down. I kind of get blindsided by reflections on my own career. So my question, another mentee question, is when do you find yourself thinking about your career? So I'll just give it a minute, just spend a minute, just think about those times where you find yourself reflecting, checking in on your career. So I'll wait for a few answers to come in. Yeah, when you're having a bad week, you think, oh gosh, why am I doing this? Or whatever it is you end up thinking. When you're having a bad week, great, thank you. When on holiday, that's a massive one. Often we're so busy doing, it's only when you're in the departure lounge or when you've sent those last few panicked emails that you think, oh, actually, where am I at? And, you know, maybe towards the end of Thursday of a holiday and the week off, you're thinking, right, I'm going to go back to work and this, and this will have changed. Not satisfied, unhappy with how I'm being led on holiday, fed up, annual reviews, frustrated. Yes, when I compare myself to others, that's a great one. Feeling demotivated. Gosh, yeah, when Sunday scaries kick in. I've heard them called the Sunday night blues, but not the Sunday scaries. It's very true. If you've got a job that's stretching you and making you feel uncomfortable, that can happen. Yeah, when someone else gets promoted. Out of work. In the face-to-face session yesterday, we had a few freelance people, and talking to them, it really made me feel, empathetic towards them. You know, it's a hard sort of stint. Not often enough. Yes. Too focused on the day job. Yes. Okay, brilliant. Well, we've had some great answers. So thanks everybody for providing them. And one thing that always strikes me and hits me right between the eyes is we've had a few people. Oh, sorry about the person who's got imposter syndrome. You are not alone, by the way. I'm in that club. We have a lot of people, and yesterday in the face-to-face session was no different. They provide all kinds of different answers, but actually, very few people say, well, you know, actually, I reflect on my career during my regular scheduled career management time. When I check in against my career plan. So we had a couple of people talk about their annual review and their appraisal, and that's great. But a lot of the time, it does we really deeply think about our careers when that emotional slap in the face or pat on the back comes along. And really, that's hard to reconcile, that feeling of how important these things are, and that kind of passive, reactive way of thinking about our careers. And anybody who's worked in any form of leadership development, which will be lots of people on this call, will know, you know, one of the things that we often come back to is around planning and having goals. And I love this quote from Greg Reed, which is, a dream with a date becomes a goal. A goal broken down into steps becomes a plan backed by action makes your dreams come true. So we've got this real juxtaposition between, how many of us actually have that career plan that we check in on. So most of us mentioned appraisals. I don't think anybody I saw mentioned career planning, and yet the importance it has on our lives. Now, many of you will know who this next person is. This is Tony Robbins, one of the great minds. So somebody mentioned Dave Goggins on the people who've had a great career. Tony Robbins often comes on. One of the original thinkers in terms of self-improvement. If you'd like a coaching session series with Tony Robbins, the rack rate for you and me, not if you're a president or a sports star, but if it's just you and me, ringing up Tony Robbins saying, can we have a series of coaching sessions one-on-one with you? It's $1 million. He is, one of the celebrity coaches and is also highly effective. So check out some of his stuff. But he quotes often an anecdote around Harvard graduates, and they found even within Harvard, even within that graduate population, 83% of people who'd spent all their time and energy and effort in getting to Harvard and achieving an education actually didn't have an end career goal at the end of it. 14% of them did have a goal, but it wasn't written down, and 3% of them had a goal that was written down and really, really prominent. So again, just furthering that juxtaposition between actually where we're at in terms of how important it is and how much we write down goals. And the anecdote does go on to say that those who had a written goal and went on to earn far more and be much happier in their careers than other people, which kind of follows. So another check-in just with our group here, just in terms of your goals and plans. I know some of you in the informal word flow chat mentioned, when LinkedIn gets updated, or when I meet colleagues, or when I've had a bad week. In terms of the mechanics, how many of you, and you can just place a blue dot on the line and then hit submit, how many of you have no plan and no goal? How many of you have a goal, sort of general direction, but it's not specific? Who has maybe a SMART goal, but it's kind of always there? It's like next year's problem. I'm just going to focus on this week. Who's got a goal and plan? Who's really at number 5? Who's got a great career goal plan? It's written somewhere. I know we've got a colleague of ours who's one of our global solution leads, absolutely brilliant guy, and he had this vision of himself, and he didn't used to work in consulting, and he had this vision of himself in a really smart suit, just come out of a client meeting having learned to be a great consultant. So, have that real clarity. So great to see some of these results coming in here. We're kind of, and this is similar to the face-to-face yesterday, we're kind of in the middle. And I assume a lot of the people on the end of this call are working HR or learning and development. So we're meant to be the best at this, and we're plodding along down here. What about your typical person in your organization? Now, I know what is typical, but just quickly, if you're someone with a career and goal plan, what's typical? Let's see if the balance shifts slightly. We'll just see, because it certainly did yesterday. Okay, so one person's actually got, maybe thinks they're behind the curve in their own organization, and there is a 5. So that's great to see. We'll just see where that balance comes in. And you kind of getting the point as we go here. I'm testing the water, and many of us, if you see a number, by the way, it means multiple people have put their dot in the same place. You can see this theme here, so it's massively important, but actually we really aren't so good at being structured around this stuff. Stat attack number 1. Senior leaders often think, well, yeah, we've got the structures in place for people to provide plans, but then what we've seen play out, and this is from some LHH research, senior leaders think they're providing the skills and the opportunities to provide assessments and reskilling plans and structure, but 38% of staff, so people in non-management positions, think their leaders actually regularly check in with them and help them develop with the plan. So we've got this sort of differing view as well, which is interesting. So this is really important, but we're not great at it. And does anyone, I don't know if anybody's heard of Otto Lappi, but Otto Lappi, you can Google Otto Lappi's research. Otto Lappi worked in racing and driving safety, and has done a bunch of research, and other people have also done research in this vein. And you can do this experiment on your own, actually. The next time you're walking around, I recommend not doing this piece of research while you're driving around at 120 miles an hour. But Otto Lappi did a piece of research where people were split into 2 groups. Group A had to look at the outside of a turn as they went around corners. So every time they were turning right, they'd look left and they'd look at the outside, and they'd use that as their guideline to kind of start aiming their car. So they weren't looking at the apex where they had to drive, they were looking just at the outside. And Group B, they were told to look at the inside. So again, not the exact apex, not that sweet spot. You see that faint grey line where they're meant to steer, just they were meant to look at the inside. So not the spot on center point of where they wanted to be, but just the high risk side of the outside or the inside, and where they were vaguely meant to go. And the performance for Group B, who had to look at the inside, was unsurprisingly much higher. And really one of the keys to driving forward on the road and in life is keeping our eyes not on, oh, I don't want this, I don't want that, but really having a really crystal clear vision. And there have been lots of iterations of advice given. So I was born in 1983. That's a bit of personal data for you all to enjoy. And the advice when I was growing up was follow your dreams. So, what do you value about? What are you passionate about? I can remember my mum said to me when I was young, if you have a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It was all about, like, what do you love doing? I then went to university, did my undergrad in psychology. And when I rolled out of university, things had matured a bit. So when I joined Accenture in 2005, this was kind of the view of the world, was this sweet spot of, okay, what are you great at as well? So what are you passionate about, and where do you add most value? So I have a good friend of mine who works now as a set designer, and I saw them, they desperately wanted to be an actor, and I saw them in a few plays, and they were okay, but they weren't amazing, and they were never going to make it as an actor, but they were very good with their hands. So now my friend is one of the best set designers out there. There are several films and TV shows where bits that they've designed are actually prominent on the stage, in the background, their names on the credits. So they have all that excitement and buzz of being where they get the excitement from being in the movie and plays industry, but also the self-esteem and the demand on their time and that great feeling of, yes, I'm brilliant at this. And so that's a more up to date view. there's this annoying little thing called Martech's law. Now, I don't know who knows about Martech's law, but Martech observed this. If you look at the pace of change, that's on the y-axis, so innovation, adoption, and how quickly things are becoming obsolete over time. We're working in the fields, perhaps, and about, I don't know, 200 years ago, people invent machines. Then we start to mass produce those machines. So a lot of the US, when the West was won, and when the US ended up expanding it, and there were loads and loads of farms out there, all powered by Alice Chambers, tractors, mass production came, and it just really revolutionized the way that industry was done. Then we invent electronic technology, and that comes along. And the thing about electronic technology that we could mass produce is that it means that it actually, what you see start to happen is electronic technology means we can innovate more quickly. Because rather than having to physically make a prototype, we can electronically model a prototype, for example. So now we're in this electric ecosystem where I can be sat and I can talk to a friend of mine on WhatsApp. We can co-design an app somewhere offshore, not even using our own space. It's all held on virtual servers. And we can disrupt an industry very quickly. So we've got this kind of exponential curve of technology. Technology is increasing at an exponential rate, and the rate of disruption is increasing at an exponential rate. But the rate of obsolescence is also going faster and faster. So what was red hot 4 years ago is now becoming obsolete. An example of something on this, Facebook was, everybody had Facebook. And now you're starting to see Facebook's popularity dip, but of course, Facebook have pivoted and they've moved towards Meta. So you start to see this increasing exponential curve around technology, but organizations within industries, they are moving at a logarithmical rate. So the number of role changes that people hold the same role for 20 years. And that's changing. So the new view of the world is this, really to keep in the sweet spot, what we have to have is, yes, what we value and what we're passionate about. Yes, where we add most value, but also what the world needs. And we have to keep our eye on that more and more. So I know it's hard. I know what's a typical role within your organization, but just have a look at that. In your organization, just take the average person, whatever that is, and just, do people love what they do, but they're not great at it? Are people doing what they're really good at, but they don't necessarily love it? Are people doing what the world needs, and they love it, but you want to build your capability out? Are people in the sweet spot? I'd just be really interested to see where you are. I'm going to put my own dot on here. And I think, honestly, within LHH, I think we're doing quite well. But our dot is, I'll just prompt it quite near the middle. I think for LHH, we want to always be moving more towards what the world needs, and our industry is being disrupted. There are all kinds of developmental apps and things like that coming through. So it's great to just I just thought it'd be interesting for everybody to see a bit of a balance of where we are. And what's interesting is some of us are saying our companies need to move with the times and move faster and faster. The other thing is how few people are doing, or how few organizations have got people doing, well, it's great actually, they've got people doing things they love. Nobody's doing things they love that they're not skilled at, which is great. It's just interesting to have a little pulse check. Just thought it'd be worth us checking. Quite a few people, I've seen a little cluster of what the world needs and what we're good at, but not much love for it. So that's an interesting one to me. So anyway, just a nice little model to just ponder for you all. And it brings this point to bear, which is we're living in an SOS of skills. So these are the stats that come out from things like the LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report, from Gartner. Only 20% of employees have the skills needed for both their current role and their future career at the moment. So only 20% have all the skills they need. 87% of executives say their organizations are already experiencing skills gaps or expect them to face them within the next few years. And 5 years, less than 5 years, is the average shelf life of a skill. Now, I would say within that average, we don't all need to panic. There are some core skills that remain steady, but there are lots of niche skills that are really pulling that shelf life down. Whether that's a particular piece of coding that people need to learn, whether that's a particular trend within an industry at the moment, whatever it may be, Less than 5 years is that average shelf life. What that's created is a shortage. And there's a shortage of skills. There's an overcapacity of outdated skills in certain areas, and we need to adapt faster and faster. And this is really where we get to why we need to get involved in igniting careers. 31% of people are encouraged to undertake training or re-upskilling, despite there being this huge gap. 66% of employees say they're not satisfied with career prospects at their company. And so even though we know there are loads of new roles needed, new skills needed within our organisation, 66% of people are saying they're not satisfied, or they're not, subtext, they're not seeing that those roles are there. And 38% of employees are thinking of changing jobs or already doing it. So I know there are things that I'm going to need. I can't see them internally, I'm off. So that's the SOS of skills that's happening, and it's hitting all of us at the moment. What does this mean? Well, think about the cost implications of it. So 15 to 30% is the average recruitment cost. So any one of those new skills that you aren't grabbing internally, that you need to hire externally via a recruiter, you're paying 15 to 30% of that first year's salary. Average redundancy, now I appreciate many organisations run a statutory redundancy programme, but average redundancy in the UK is 15,750. Now I appreciate there are some high positions and long tenures that pull that average up, but redundancy is expensive. It can cost 6 times less to build talent from within than hire externally. And that excludes the HR overhead time involved in administering recruitment and redundancy programs. It excludes the impact to brand value of people being dismissed, because that never looks good for a brand. It dismisses the employee engagement uplift you get, and it dismisses the legal costs. So it's ignoring all of those, that 6 times cost. And 21 million, we had a client, or we still have a client who worked very closely with us. Rather than letting people go in one area and hiring in others, they were able to save £21 million over the course of 3 years, just by successfully, artfully redeploying people and moving them around. So there's plenty of impact there. So third point in the lift is this. It's really important. Please do something about it for yourself, for your company. We're not great at it at the moment, and things are more complicated now, and it's getting more expensive. So that's the sweet spot now. If you had to give someone some advice to say, look, I really want you to stay in that sweet spot between what you love, where you add the most value, and what the world needs, take it to an individual level. If you had to give someone some awful advice, so we'll flip this, we won't do good advice, awful advice about their career, what would it be? So we had some quite fun answers yesterday. I just thought it would be more fun than what great career advice do you have for people? You know, what awful advice do you have? And I'm going to type in one that we had yesterday, which was pretty powerful. Somebody in our group yesterday said they had to stay in the background. That was their advice they got from somebody. Genuine advice was, oh, you know, don't rock the boat, stay in the background. Yeah, stay for the money. Brilliant. That's some pretty toxic advice. I love that. Stop learning, you know everything. Yeah, I love that. Don't build meaningful connections. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You've reached your, yeah, you peaked. I love that one. And follow your dreams. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, advice from the 80s. Just do what you want. I had a friend who quit their job to try and be a singer, and they were again, you know, they were good, but they weren't great. But you know, at least they had a go at it. But yeah, you know, follow your dreams. Your company will always look after you. Don't listen to feedback. Yeah, don't listen to feedback. Just keep going. It's not you, it's them. That's a great one. Do the minimum. Yep, stay where you are. Keep your mouth shut. Grass is always greener. Yeah, focus on getting better at what you're bad at. Yes, that's some brilliant toxic advice. Just focus on what you're bad at. Keep your head down. Yeah, go for whatever will pay the most. We all die in the end. Lovely. Okay, stay if you're getting paid. Yeah, okay, great. We've had some really, hopefully that's been a bit of fun for people, just some do nothing and wait. Brilliant. So I just wanted to share, this is our kind of framework that we share with people on an individual basis, which is this: to keep us in the sweet spot and to stay relevant. We always say to people, here are the 5 Ps. Person, like, how are you unique? What do you value? What are your interests? What's your style? So know yourself. Performance. So I meet people like this all the time. They know themselves, and actually they're quite good at their job, but they don't do anything thinking about their reputation, their network, how their competencies are perceived. So in terms of your career ability, you might be great at doing your job, but actually what's your broader kind of reputation, and what's your performance like, known as within the industry and organization. Place, how's the world of work changing? So keep an eye on the place. How's your industry changing? How's the organization itself changing? How's your career or job likely to change in the next year, 18 months, 3 years? Possibilities, what are my aspirations? So what options are out there for me? How do they align with the organization? And what SMART goals have I got? What goals have I got that I'm just going to run at? So possibilities is a really useful one. And then lastly, in the middle, I've actually got to do something. What's my plan? Who's holding me to account? What steps are broken down to, and what support and resources do I need? So that's our 5 Ps that for a long time we've used, and we acquired this 5 Ps framework because there was a small company based in the States, and we just really struggled at that time to break into the market because it was such a good product and it was so reliable, this 5 Ps framework, and people loved it, and people do use it all the time. But if you want to ignite people's careers, I want to share something with you, which is I think there is a 6th P. So I'm going to set you all a little challenge now, and Graham, you know the right answer. So if somebody does type that in the chat, then brilliant. You've got a table tennis ball, so here's mine. It's got to go away from you. It's got to come back to you. You can't hold on to it. It's got to come to a complete stop between going away and coming back. And you can't bounce it against a wall. You can't bounce it against a collar. You can't slap it up against your own hand. How do you do it? So we physically set people this challenge yesterday in LHH's offices. And we had something like 30 people have a go at it. And somebody got it after about, I don't know, but probably was about 4 minutes. But it did take a bit of time. And one person got it, and then a few other people sort of copied it along the way. So we did get there in the end. But the answer is this, and it takes a bit of time to get there. The answer is you just throw it up in the air, and gravity will take hold of that ball. It will stop it perfectly at the top, and it will return it to your hand. And you don't have to spin the ball, so it does come to a perfect stop. It doesn't bounce off anything. But the reason that is a tricky challenge is because many of us get functionally fixated on the ball as something that just goes forwards and backwards. And functional fixatedness, this fixed view of ourselves, our perception of ourselves and our jobs and our limitations, that is the 6th P. And if you think about any past relationship you've been in, people often say this, I knew they weren't quite right. There's these odd things that we hold on to that just stop us. And very often, if you're trying to ignite mobility within your careers, we encounter a lot of clients who go, well, we bought a portal, and that shows what roles might be available to people. But for whatever reason, people just aren't using it. We've got a system of training points, and you can go and you can use your training points to apply, and train towards them. People just aren't engaging it. And, actually a lot of it comes from not just putting in front of people things that are attractive, but often people struggling to let go. And there's a brilliant plug I'll put in for this piece by Keegan and Leahy, Immunity to Change. There's a book, there's a little YouTube talk, there's also a Harvard Business Review article, which I've screenshotted a little bit of it from. And it centers around this, which is these they're not bad beliefs we have about ourselves, but they're beliefs we have about ourselves that we can't let go of. And people sit in jobs that they know aren't quite right for them, or they aren't future relevant for years. And through our career transition part of the business, when people have lost their role and they just have to look forward, a lot of people end that experience saying, in the end, that was the best thing that happened to me because I had to look up, I had to look out. And why is there a picture of a monkey on the screen? Well, about 150 years ago, when we were trying to fill London Zoo with all kinds of animals, what they used to do to catch monkeys was they would have a jar, and the jar would be held in concrete or in cement, or it would be tethered to the ground. And it has a narrow neck. And they put a nice big juicy orange in that jar. And a monkey would be able to reach into the jar, hold on to that big orange, but then because its hand has expanded, so it can't reach in, it has to do this. It just couldn't get its hand out, and the monkeys would become so distracted and frustrated at being so close to getting this thing that actually the hunters were able to close in on it, capture it, it's genuinely what they used to do. And very often with our careers, we're like that. So in the Harvard Business Review article, there's a simple diagnostic test for immunity to change. And effectively what it says is, you say you want to do this thing, you say you want to be an MD one day, you say you want to do X, Y, Z, you say you want to be somebody in high responsibility, you say you want to be someone who does public speaking. But for whatever reason, when the moment comes where you could explore it, you're just not letting yourself have a go. And for a lot of people, that comes down to, oh, well, if I did that, maybe I'd fall on my face. If I did that, oh, maybe my team would feel like I felt I was better than them. And there's a brilliant podcast I listen to called The Soft White Underbelly. And I'm quite interested in this phenomenon of people who are really, really, it looks at the dark side of human nature, but it explores it from just an honest conversation perspective. And you can reflect on, well, actually, here are psychological phenomenon at play in a negative environment. So often, a lot of what we see in the press is about the positive and what we should be doing, but it's quite interesting seeing people who've gone through quite tricky journeys in life. And one of the things that a lot of these people say is, I knew that it was not great to be in that environment. I knew that I shouldn't have been doing this, but it was just my identity. So these people who, you know, they go to jail when they're very, very young, that barrier is gone, and it just becomes their identity. And I know there are things, certainly in my career, I can tell you, no, I've reflected, I probably should have. Accenture is a great company. I should have left there 2 years earlier, but I just couldn't bring myself to let go of that pride of being there. So we all have those things. So my question is, what do you struggle to let go of? If you think about, if I just said, right, all of you have lost your job, you cannot fail, what job would you go for? And what are the things that are holding you back? So we'll just pop a few of them in here. So mine was quite simple, really. Mine was just pride and ego, and a bit of fear. That was what held me back. Lack of confidence, yeah, the way we used to do things. The team I'm with, yeah, very often it's like, well, I kind of know that, you know, I just don't want to upset my friends. Believe it will get better. That's a really good one. So there's a puzzle, a psychological maths puzzle, really, called the Tower of Hanoi. And you can Google image search that if you want to while I'm talking. And it's got 3 poles, and one of the poles at the end has got concentrically smaller rings on top of it, and the challenge is to move all of those over to the end pole whilst keeping that shape of a funnel out of these rings. And people struggle with that because of a thing called proximity. There's a proximity heuristic. So your brain goes, well, this step here gets me closer to the end, so I'm going to move all these rings over to the end. Oh, and you trip over yourself, and very often we can be very close to a promotion. We can be very close to things getting better. And you think, oh, if I just hold on 6 months, if I just hold on 6 months. And in a world of internal mobility, trying to get people to ignite their careers, and very often people are saying, well, I could take a risk and move over to this area. I could try this thing, but I think I'm going to stay here and try and get this promotion here. I'm going to stay here and try and do what, you know, wait it out. So comfort of routine, missing what's to come, fear of failure, fear of the unknown. The rate of pay, that's another one we struggle to let go of that. Self-belief, financial responsibility. So if we want systemically to make things better and easier for people, you know, there are some things that we ought to be considering doing. So thanks everybody who provided from, you know, some great answers there. And there's a great model, which hopefully many of you know, the SCARF model. Check it out. So David Rock, you can watch a brief video of him on YouTube. And David Rock came up with his colleagues, the SCARF model. And it's those things that during cave people times, we really would have struggled to let go of, because it actually would have been deadly to do so. So things we are hardwired to be drawn towards and almost allergic to, if they're positively presented, we're drawn towards them, and if they're negatively presented, we run away from them. So I'll explain them. So S, status. So if I'm in a cave people's tribe, you know, a million years ago, whatever it may have been, my status drops. For whatever reason, maybe I've offended the chief, and we come across a cave, and in that cave there might be a saber-toothed tiger, there might be an enemy tribe, we don't know. Who's going in first? Is it the chief, or is it the person at the lowest pecking order in society? So we're very sensitive to any drop in status. we're very sensitive to anything that looks vaguely uncertain. For some people, they get triggered by, oh, this is being done to me, rather than by me. So that sense of autonomy, relatedness. So several people put, oh, I've got my lovely team. I don't know the other people. And fairness. You know, gosh, you know, I'm a bit hacked off that that so-and-so got this promotion, I'm going to leave. Or, oh, I got this, it doesn't feel fair. So one of the phenomena, that there are some great interviews with lottery winners. We're seeing this phenomenon with lottery winners. They don't, you know, they're not always happy. And some of them said, well, actually, this great thing had happened to me. And I just feel this like yin yang feeling of, well, something great's happened to me. Something bad must be about to happen to me. And they carry that around for years. So there's this feeling of fairness. Well, if you unfairly get a promotion or you unfairly get moved internally, if it's a great move for you, some people actually feel this feeling of sort of guilt afterwards. So these are the kind of core barriers that go in people's way, and it's really about letting go. Some companies have done. So what can we do? Just in terms of, you think about those things systemically that you could do, or things you could do for yourself to help people let go. So let's just put a few examples on this. So one example that I'll pop in just as a freebie to get us started is better role titles. So one of the things that people are sometimes a bit clueless about, that maybe somebody's hiring, let me just put this in. There we go. So sometimes, you know, I work as a solution lead. That's not the world's sexiest title, but I might be hiring for somebody who's a junior solution lead. You know, could I make that better? Could I make that have more of a status applied to it? And yeah, raising awareness of the fact that you know, people are moving, sharing career stories. So people who have successfully done things, that's a great one. Empowering others, yeah, succession planning, that's a really good one. You're giving people a bit more time to think, well, these are the options. Give people a bit more autonomy. Yeah, education, give people the skills, give them some confidence. Visible career paths and maybe career options. So I know that's a big one, is saying, well, you know, you can either go this way or that way. Normalize failing, yeah, normalize trying and normalize failings. Educate that sideways is valuable, definitely. Share stories of failure, make sure people are comfortable with doing that. Skills development, what else have we got? Some ones that always come through. Opportunities to experiment, that's a massive one. So not saying, well, you have to take this role internally, but, you know, would you like to try a pilot? Or would you like to get involved in a side project? Okay, what else have we got? Scrolling through secondments. So celebrating success, yeah, clearly defined pathways, opportunities to experiment, yes. Okay, brilliant. I'll give everyone just another minute or so, just while a few of these come in, and then I'll talk through. I've got a slide, I've got a couple of great examples, and then a few more general tips about how we can ignite regular check-ins. Yeah, regular check-ins, that's a really good one. Rather than making it, okay, here's your annual career conversation, actually regularly check in. How are you? How are you going towards that? How are you going towards that goal? We talked yesterday, it was one of the side notes that came up, but I don't know if anyone's heard of fast goals. So rather than SMART goals, which focus on me and my achievements now, and very short and narrow, you know, this specific goal in this year, I'll do this. Fast goals, frequently discussed, ambitious, shared, and timely. So actually, oh no, transparent, sorry. So rather than me and my SMART goals, it's okay, guys, here's my big picture thing that I'm trying to achieve. I'm going to talk to you about it often. You know, really powerful, subtle thing you can do. Education. Great. Thanks to everybody for providing input. I really appreciate this. So those are some great examples. I'll give you a couple of real life ones that I thought were so cool. And I'm going to randomly start with dolmio or ragu pasta sauce. So the story goes thus, and I'll explain why I'm talking to you about pasta sauce. In the States, Italian cuisine suddenly became very popular, and there was a manufacturer of pasta sauce, or manufacturer of other foods that wanted to break into the pasta sauce market in a big way. And the first thing they did was they held some focus groups. And in those focus groups, they said, okay, look, you walk into a supermarket, what are you looking for in a pasta sauce? And people said, well, I'd like something that looks like it's associated with family values. Or I'd like something that's quite herby and spicy. Or I'd like something that's, you know, really got a rich tomatoey flavor. or maybe I'd like one that's a particular shade of red. All these things they asked them. And then the next round of kind of testing the market was they then prepared sample meals. So they had a chef cook up different batches and they taste tested them. And the most popular by far was massively chunky pasta sauce. Do you know how many people had said in the focus groups they wanted extra chunky pasta sauce? None. And where I'm going with this is we don't always know what we want until we're doing it. And sometimes we're so fixed in our own world about this is the type of thing I want, and I'm going to wait till these 1 or 2 career opportunities come up. We just can't see. You've got to start people doing it. So a couple of really powerful examples of where this happened. IBM, and I give them huge credit for being brave enough to try this. And you can look this up. They did a brilliant, really powerful piece where they said to people, okay, you can take a career break. And they had a bunch of, IBM, you can imagine a technology company, they had loads of different bits of technology that were slowly becoming less and less relevant. And they could kind of read the mood music and see within reasonable bounds of certainty that people's roles were going to become less relevant. So they said, okay, you can take a career break, explore whatever you want to explore. You can set up a micro business, we'll help you train to do other things, and we'll guarantee you a role if you decide to come back. And people went and did this. And actually, they were amazed at how few people came back. People had broken away from their expectation and that kind of, they'd broken away. They had a feeling of confidence and that they could do more. And actually, rather than having to make those people redundant, they were actually able to save enough headcount so they didn't have to do that hardly at all. And actually, it was a brilliant model of just thinking about that scarf model of barriers. It took all of them down. Go and explore, try something new. The extra chunky pasta sauce principle, try it, get involved, you might love it. And actually, if you think about most of the relationships you've been in, if you said, well, you can go back, you'd go, no, I've tried something new and it's better. So it's a really powerful example. The other one that I love is Disney. So Disney had some musicians. It turns out that actually the skills you need as a musician are quite similar to those as a programmer. Disney were able to, via some very skillful communication, get some of those creatives who were involved in programming, in music, to just give it a try some programming. And they were all great at it. And they thought, well, actually, I'm trying this now. I quite like it. Might there be a role here? And they were. So it's that subtlety, it's that breaking down of barriers. Other systemic things we can do, I'll just talk you through this. So in terms of status, I talked about making role type, paying attention to role titles, recognizing people who've tried something new, sponsoring those things. So very often we're asking employees to move around, but actually we don't have our senior leaders talking necessarily about where in the business they've sat, and what they've done. So sponsoring and really driving this narrative and normalizing career mobility. The internal sales, so teaching managers, for example, how to actually sell a role internally. Role modeling, so getting managers to actually role model mobility. Often we focus on, well, I've got all these employees here. What about their managers? Could they try a secondment? Could they be seen to be doing something elsewhere? Supply and demand planning, so trying to give people as much advance warning so that rather than the message being, Tim Edwards, you're losing your role, it's Tim, we're looking at careers, a few years' time we can see this is a growth area, and it becomes much less of a, oh, this has been done to me, I'm going to drop my drop-in status, I've left the sinking ship team, actually trying to drive it to a proactive conversation. Certainty, so skills matching. So one of the things we find is we have 2 ways you can enter the LHH careers portal. You can either create your own profile and select skills, or we can pass through people's CVs and use some technology to come up with adjacent skills. And what we find is people aren't very good at listing their own skills. Either they list the skills they think they have, that they must have, so they don't list all their true skills, or they kind of only list a few and they've got a few that they just don't seem that appealing, or they wouldn't consider themselves to have those skills. So rather than saying, I'm going to match you based on the job you hold and the job here that's available, if you look at the skills level, you can encourage people to talk about skills and the skills associated with a particular to-be role. And you'll find if you make it a skills dialogue, and there are bits of technology that can do that, it makes it much easier. Quality upskilling, so rather than just moving people, really paying attention to making that a success, running pilots, giving people as much warning as possible, and then financial advice is another big one. So you're way less likely to move to a similar role in the same organisation if you're stressed about money. But actually, providing people with help and support around understanding finances and how they can be clever with finances, it's a really powerful, underrated way of doing it. Autonomy, so self-led approach, career coaching, career pathing options. Relatedness, so meet the area. Boehringer did a really good job of this when I was there. They had senior leaders who presented their area, but then they had to meet somebody at your level. Which just gave it that really good feel for, okay, well, would my face fit here? The role of advisors or coaches, so often if you don't have that comfort with your immediate manager, actually having somebody who holds the narrative, who knows you as well, who sits in the organisation, with whom you feel that rapport around your career, and that can help move you across. So competence and trial of manager training, so trying to train the managers about how to have a good career conversation, trying to separate the careers conversation from the performance management conversation. I know a lot of organizations, because of time, they keep those the same, but trying to separate them actually makes this conversation here around careers a much easier one. And I'm not saying to you if I think you should consider another area or you're not good enough. It's actually, let's talk about your career, these great strengths. You could be a success here. Trying to split those apart and make the relationship easier and encourage people to work with managers is really important. Fairness, so transparent process, making some form of support available to everyone, and adjusting policies is a really powerful one. And we could spend all day talking about that particular leg. So just some ideas and things that we've seen work well. So really important, we're not great at it, it's getting more complex. Often we ignore the psychological barriers. We talk about, well, I've got this portal, here are some roles, I've asked people to move and they haven't moved. No, what's holding people back? Really pay attention to those parts of it. Plus, ironically, if I look at this original survey, what drives life satisfaction? What drives satisfaction of your job? 39%, so the overwhelming majority is the relationships I have. Have I had a good week? Do my team like me? Do my team rate me? Have I let someone down? Have I done a great job for someone? And actually the majority of the interpersonal relationship value we have is our relationship with management. So it's sad really that, I really care about my relationship with my boss, but that can become a blocker to me moving. So here's some stats from some recent LHH research. 85 million jobs globally displaced by 2025. 84% of people concerned or fearful about losing a job. But these are the sad ones. 80% of people think they don't have the right skills, and more than 60% feel left alone to identify that. And so I might really like my boss, but actually my manager is not going to help me move. Actually, 1/3 of people didn't even ask their manager for any skills training because they didn't want to appear incompetent. 31% of people, just 31%, are encouraged to take training or reskilling and upskilling, and 36% of people receive career guidance. So very often managers get trained on performance management conversations, but they don't get trained on career conversations, which is really, really sad. Very often managers will talk about people's roles, how you're performing in your role, but they don't often broaden out. So just a quick pulse check, in general, your managers, do they have great conversations with direct reports around careers? Not performance appraisals, but career conversations. Do they hoard talent? So do they kind of have a conversation, but it's all about, well, here's what's right for you here. So just use the little sliders. Do they hold good feedback conversations, but not necessarily career conversations? And actually, do we provide any support to incentivize them or help them do it? So just, a little pulse check. I'll put my answer in there. And we'll just see where this shakes out. The count at the bottom right is how many people have voted, by the way. So we've got about 70 people on the line. So, I'll wait for that to hit about, 40, and then we'll start to get a more realistic view of people's thoughts on it. So the number in the circle is the average, and then the sort of curve you can see is the distribution. That's just where that's come from, if you're wondering. So let's see where these shake out. We've got about 20 answers now. I'll wait for it just to stabilize a little bit. We'll say that's good enough for a pulse check. So you see it's about half, but that bottom one, supported and incentivized to enable career mobility. Very often managers are great at managing people who are doing what they do, achieving targets and tasks that teams have, but it's all very in year. Trying to get managers to have good career conversations is really, really important and a missed pot. So things we can do to unleash managers. Why should managers be expected to have good career conversations and career mobility conversations if leaders don't? So it's got to start from the top. We've got to educate them on how to have a good career conversation. We've got to celebrate successes for managers who've helped people to move. So we had a brilliant guy who worked at LHH until very recently called Joe Wells. Joe, if you're online, hello. And Joe was known as, if you went to work for Joe, your career would kick on. And it didn't matter where you were from, making sure we reflect on that and celebrate it and provide escalation and accountability. So if managers are not great at having career conversations, being clear as HR, we are here to make sure that is done well. And so one of the things Bring you had was your manager's performance was a 360 view. And really trying to factor in that into their feedback. Flip the narrative towards mission. So not necessarily this department does this and that department does that, but actually we're a company on a mission towards this, and therefore we need these particular skills or people moving into these particular roles. So try to flip what is perceived as important within the organisation towards missions. Use others to hold the narrative. So introduce maybe a separate career manager or external career coach or internal career coach. Provide self-driven support so people can sometimes sidestep a manager and by using online resources, for example. Mentors, split the career conversation from performance management we talked about and enable those fast goals. Simple goals, light templates. I think there's a perception that people have to have deep, smart goals about their overall careers or massively long career plans. Trying to really up careers as part of the day-to-day discussion. So just a few ideas of what people have done. And even if they don't do it brilliantly, many of you may know the Hawthorne effect. The Hawthorne Western Electrical Plant is a site, still a site in the States. And at the time when this happened, they were making things like cables. And they had some teams and they were interested in the impact of things like lighting, and conditions on people's performance. So they took a couple of teams and they measured their performance and they checked in with them about how productive they felt and how happy and how they felt about life at Hawthorne. And then they adjusted the lighting and a few other things and they measured output again and it had gone up. And then they adjusted the lighting again and they measured again and they found it had gone up. And then just to complete the experiment, they returned the lighting to the original condition and they checked in again on the team about how they were feeling. And just by measuring regularly, they found that on its own had a massive impact on performance. So even if there aren't the career opportunities yet everywhere, even if managers aren't doing a perfect job of it, just making career conversations happen is a quick way of securing a quick win around your employees. So this is massively important. We're not great at it. Things are more complicated and it's getting expensive. Please don't overlook psychological barriers. Please don't ignore the managers. So very often, most of the clients who come to us say, I really want to make some career coaching available to individuals. But they often ignore those managers and it's absolutely integral. Think about that 89% of our relationship worth at work is the manager. So, rather than making those managers a blocker, try to get them involved. Don't forget, everyone's different. So, almost goes without saying, we haven't got much time left, but, obviously you will want to treat a high potential differently from someone who's a flight risk, from someone who's loyal, someone who's maybe got some potential but they're plodding along. We'd love to talk to you about how to adjust that. So almost home. Last thing is not everyone's the same, but don't panic, you're not alone. So we're going to send out to you afterwards a summary of the slides. And those of you who'd like it, those 5 Ps I mentioned earlier, we'll send you a career initiative assessment just so you can check in for yourself about the 5 Ps, where you individually are against it. We have all sorts of fancy technology. I really didn't want this to turn into a sales pitch today. We've got some wonderful technology that can help people to see where they are, what gaps there are, what opportunities there are for them, and can enable all of that for you. And we'd love to talk to you about this, so you're not alone. And I think that just covers off our time. So we've probably got 1 minute left, Graham, if there are any questions that came through or comments that came through on the chat. But that was all I really wanted to just, blast us through. And thanks so much for your time, attention, and patience. So Graham, I'll throw it over to you. Is there anything in particular people wanted answering?
No, there haven't been any obvious questions in the Q&A or the chat function.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I know we've sprinted through, but hopefully that's been some fun and interesting. There's a few anecdotes and things you can take away for lunchtime. And yeah, I wish you all a very good rest of your week. And I look forward to speaking soon. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.